Hare Krishna. So welcome everyone. We are discussing on the fifth canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we had completed 12 chapters of the fifth canto. And so far we have discussed how Jad Bharat, who was Bharat Maharaj, who took birth again as a deer and then again as a Jad Bharat, when he met King Rahugana, and Rahugana engaged Jad Bharat in carrying his palanquin. And Jad Bharat, he was not doing that search properly because he was trying to avoid the ants which are there on the path. King Rahugana, he became very angry and he chastised, and in sarcastic words he chastised Jad Bharat. And in response to that, Jad Bharat, he gave very wonderful philosophical reasons and
Hare Krishna
answers to
Prabhuji.
the questions which were
Hare
raised
Krishna Prabhuji.
by King Rahugana. And in response to that, King Rahugana realized that
Hare Krishna.
this Jad Bharat is not an ordinary person who is looking like a dumb man. He is a very, very learned Brahmana, and he asks, "Who are you? Please enlighten me." And in response to the sincere inquiries of King Rahugana, now Jad Bharat, he starts describing the various aspects which Rahugana had asked about. Okay. So now Jad Bharat, he starts the description of this material world. So this chapter, 13th chapter and the 14th chapter, will see both chapters together because these both chapters are connected. And in these two chapters, Jad Bharat, he gives a very beautiful allegorical story which describes the nature of this material world, what all people in this world they go through, how they suffer in their various pursuits of the material life, and how to come out of this material existence. So just by reading these two chapters of this fifth canto, one can develop sufficient detachment from this material world, and at the same time, he can continue his journey to develop his taste for Krishna consciousness. So that's how we have to understand that these two chapters, which are entitled Further Talks Between Maharaj Rahugana and Jad Bharat, and the next chapter, that is the 14th chapter, which is entitled as the material world as the great forest of material enjoyment. So these two chapters, they are the allegorical story. So in the 13th chapter, from text 1 to 19, Jad Bharat gives a allegorical story. And then in the 14th chapter, from 1st verse to 41st verse, Shukdev Goswami, he gives the explanation of this allegorical story on being asked by Parikshit Maharaj. And then in the end of these 13th chapter, from 20 to 26th verses, Jad Bharata concludes his instructions, and King Rahugana expresses his gratitude. And in the end of the 14th chapter, that is from 42nd to 46th verses, the 4 verses, they glorify Jad Bharata. So in this 13th chapter, by describing this forest of material world, Jad Bharata, he puts the king on a horse of detachment so that the king can cross this ocean or the forest of material existence. So this is because it is compared to the forest. So in the forest, if you want to cross, you have to have a very strong, fast horse. So therefore, in the last verse of this previous chapter, it was described that one should cross this ocean of material life. What is that path which is mentioned, which one should take to cross this ocean? And what is the traveler on that path? This chapter describes these two things in great detail. But we'll see that if you're reading the book or side by side soft copy or this 13th chapter, you'll see that in the purports of the 13th chapter, just like Prabhupada, he always does. He does not wait for the 14th chapter to come, start, and then give the explanation of what is there in the 13th chapter. In every purport of the 13th chapter, Prabhupada is giving the explanation, what it actually means, so that a person who just reads the 13th chapter itself, he will understand what is the actual meaning of this verse or this chapter. Because generally speaking, people of Kali Yuga, they don't have the patience to go through all the chapters of Bhagavatam. And secondly, they don't have the intelligence to understand all this allegorical story. Even Parikshit Maharaj, he asks Shukdev Goswami, I'm not able to understand. Please tell me what is the actual meaning of the story which was told by Jad Bharat to Rahugana. So therefore, Prabhupada does not wait for the 14th chapter to start and Shukdev Goswami to explain. He very nicely, very wonderful purports Prabhupada has written, in that he has described how to understand this verse, how this material life is very, very dangerous. So we'll begin this 13th chapter. And these are the pictures from the Gaurang Darshan Prabhu's Subodhini, in that he has very nicely compared the 13th chapter verse and the 14th chapter explanation. So the 13th chapter, Prabhupada starts, Shukdev Goswami starts the allegorical story of a merchant. And he says, once a merchant, he entered a forest to acquire goods so that he could sell them later for the profit. But actually, in doing so, he cannot find the actual happiness. So therefore, in this world, everybody is working very hard to get happiness. And Prabhupada writes, one can very easily understand how difficult and unsurmountable the path of sense gratification is. It is not so easy. Just to enjoy in this world is very, very troublesome. As it is said, sometimes people say, oh, Krishna conscious life is so very difficult. And it is said many times by the devotees, Krishna consciousness is difficult, but material life is impossible. Because by following the material life, one will get entangled into the cycle of birth and death. What does this actually mean for a person? So this merchant refers to the conditioned soul. And he enters the forest of this material world. Why? He wants to get material happiness. And there, first of all, he becomes conditioned by material nature. The Maya Devi covers the knowledge of the living entity. And then he puts him, Maya Devi, she puts him in different bodies, all the 84 lakh species of life. And there he suffers. And in the course of searching for enjoyment, he's many times baffled, many times bewildered. So that is the struggle for existence. And thirdly, Shukdev Goswami says, just living entity keeps struggling in the material existence because he does not take shelter of the pure devotees of the Lord. And these pure devotees of the Lord, they are like the bumblebees who are engaged in loving service of the Lord Vishnu. Only by taking shelter of the devotees, Guru Krishna Kripaya Pai Bhakti Lata Beej. So the devotees, they are compared to honey bees, because it is the there's some problem. Just a minute. I'm just doing. Yeah. So the devotees of the Lord, they are compared to the bumblebees, because the nature of the bumblebee is the bumblebee will go to the lotus. Therefore, the devotees are compared to honeybees or bumblebees. Tadasya kausharva sharma dato hare kathamev kathasu saram उद्धृत्य पुष्पेभ्य इवार्थ बंधो शिवाय नः कीर्तय तीर्थ कीर्तेः. So Kaushara means Vidura. So Maitreya is telling to Vidura, "O Vidura, Hari Katha is the essence of all the topics. Hari Katha mev Kathasu Saram. Of all the topics which are discussed in this world, the essence is Hari Katha. And the devotees, they are like the honeybees. Uddhritya pushpebhya ivartha bandho. Just like the honeybee goes to every flower and picks up the essence of that flower. Similarly, the devotees of the Lord, they pick up the essence from every katha, every discussion, wherever, whatever the discussion may go on. Devotees will try to find the essence, that is Krishna. That's how Srila Prabhupada, whenever he would go for morning walk, devotees would be very eager to go for morning walk with Prabhupada because they knew that morning walk means Prabhupada would be, relating all the natural phenomena. Whatever Prabhupada would see, he would relate to the some Krishna conscious aspect. One time, Prabhupada saw that there was some bird droppings. There were some bird droppings under a tree. So Prabhupada asked, "So what does this mean?" So all the devotees, they were thinking, maybe Prabhupada reads bird dropping formations also. So Prabhupada said that means, and nobody was about to answer. Nobody was able to answer. So Prabhupada said that means same bird has spent more than 2 days under the same tree. Even that birds are attached to the trees where they live. So therefore the devotees, they try to take the essence from every katha. So therefore, if somebody takes shelter of the devotees of the Lord, Guru Krishna Kripaye Paye Bhakti Lata Beej. So that is what, and Prabhupada writes in the purport of this first verse that he talks about city life, how this city life is so very troublesome, and he talks about the struggle for existence. People in the cities, they are working so very hard. And Prabhupada in great detail, he describes how he travels for long distances to go for work. And then they have to come back, and we see, even in Mumbai, people, they come from all the way from Surat every day to Churchgate, traveling 8 hours every day. So that's how people are struggling so very hard. And then in the second verse of this 13th chapter, Jad Bharat says, when this merchant enters the forest, there are 6 plunderers. And these plunderers, they plunder the misguided merchant. Because the merchant does not know where to go, where not to go. He is misguided. Therefore, he is plundered by 6 merchants. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, who are these 6? He is plundered by 6 plunderers. And who are these 6 plunderers? The mind and the senses. The desire to enjoy is so very strong in the living entity that he does not understand what is my real goal. He forgets the real goal and he gets distracted. He gets misguided in sense gratification. And therefore, Arjuna asks Krishna, Athakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushaha. Why does a living entity engage in sinful act? Although he knows that this is not correct, this is not good, but still he engages. And therefore Krishna says, Kama Esha, Krodha Esha, only because of lust, and which transforms into anger. So the desire to enjoy this gross lust and subtle lust, enjoyment of the things and the subjects, senses of this world, the objects of this world, destroys and distracts a living entity. Therefore, a spiritualist has to be very careful. Just like a living entity, when he enters the material world, he has to be very careful what to see, what not to see, how to engage his senses, because Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, where does the lust reside? Indriyani, Mano and Buddhir. In the senses, mind and intelligence. These are the 3 sitting places of lust. And therefore, Krishna says you should start controlling them. From where to start? Should I start controlling my mind? Should I start controlling my intelligence? Krishna says no. Tasmat tvam indriyanyadav niyamya bharatarshabha. Begin with controlling your gross senses. Although for many of us, to control senses is so very difficult, but that is the easiest of the three. Of the mind, intelligence, and the senses are the easiest to control. So therefore, these are the six plunderers, the mind and the five senses. They misguide a living entity. When you are walking on the road, you keep getting distracted by so many things. Some sound vibration enters the ears, some beautiful billboard will come, and some fragrance will enter the nostrils. That's how a living entity gets distracted. What does this mean? Shukdev Goswami says that conditioned soul may earn some money for advancement of Krishna consciousness. He may understand that, okay, I have to engage in devotional service, but because of the uncontrolled senses, he spends that money in sense gratification. So therefore, Prabhupada writes, the good position one attains by executing religious principles is wasted as the plundering senses take it away. So therefore, even if somebody may be a very nice, established devotee in Krishna consciousness, we cannot be neglectful. We cannot think that, okay, I have spent 10, 20 years in Krishna consciousness, now I can be little relaxed. No. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, even if one of the senses is allowed to get distracted, it can just take the whole mind. Indriyanam hi charatam yan mano anuvidhiyate. Wherever the senses go, the mind will follow. And therefore, when the mind will follow, what will follow next? Tadasya harati pragya. Intelligence will follow that mind. Just like the water, just like a boat is carried away by the wind. So therefore, even if after spending Krishna so many years in Krishna consciousness, we cannot allow our senses to wander. And therefore, Prabhupada writes, one should understand that the wealth and opportunity one gets in the material world should not be squandered in sense gratification. Kamasya na indriya priti labho jiveta yavata jivasya tattva jigyasa. Kamasya na indriya priti. When somebody acquires wealth, it should not be used for kamasya. Na indriya priti. Kam is very, very dear to senses. Jivasya tattva jigyasa. One should live only for tattva jigyasa. Therefore, Krishna consciousness teaches people about how to be self-controlled. Prabhupada writes, one should practice little austerity and not spend money on anything other than regulative life of devotional service. How to control the senses? Just by engaging all the senses in the activities of devotional service. Savay mana Krishna padarvindayoh. Although for many of us, it may be very, very difficult, but this is the easiest way from where we can start. And then Jad Bharat says, when this merchant enters the forest, the six plunderers, they plunder the misguided merchant, and then the jackals also come. The jackals, they plunder the inattentive merchant even more. Prabhupada writes that in this forest, there are many plunderers like dacoits, jackals, and tigers. And who are these jackals? Very strong. The verses in this chapter may look very, very strong and sharp, but we have to take the essence. In this verse, it is described by Jada Bharat. Jackals are compared to one's wives and children. And jackals, they cry at night. So how does these jackal cry? So Prabhupada writes, the children will say, Father, I want this, give me this, I'm your dear son. Wife will say, I'm your dear wife, please give me this. This is now. Indeed, I need it. And therefore, Shukdev Goswami says, in the 14th chapter, the family members of a miserly man take away all his wealth, although he tries to guard it. So therefore, we have to understand that a living entity, when he enters the material world, in a household life, even though he may struggle his best to earn more and more money, but he has to spend that money on so many things and so many people which he is related to. And then what happens after that? As this merchant is going in the forest, he sees there are dense boughs. Dense boughs means there are thick, bushy forests. And these dense boughs, they are composed of bushes, grass, and creepers. Prabhupada writes in the purport there that this material household is actually a whole of fruitive activity. It is a whole of fruitive activity. Just like Prahlad Maharaj writes, he speaks to Hiranyakashipu, Hitvatma patam griham andha kupam. Oh my father, you have fallen in this deep, dark well of material existence. There is only one way you can come out of it. Vanam gatoyad harima ashrayata. Go to Vrindavan. Just see the courage of Prahlad. He's saying, oh my father, he knows that my father, his biggest enemy is Lord Vishnu. And he's straightforwardly telling on his face that you are in a deep, dark well and you have to go to Vrindavan. Even in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is described that Nityanand Prabhu, he tells that your fathers, he tells to Raghunath Das Goswami, actually Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he tells Raghunath Das Goswami, your father and uncle, they are like the worm in the pit where people, they pass stool. Very, very strong words. He says they enjoy that stool, they don't want to come out of it. Even if you put them out of that place, they will again go to this place. So when scriptures, they give all these graphic examples, we should understand the purpose of these examples is to make us realize how this material world is so very abominable. Kulakshekar Maharaj speaks very beautiful verse. Andasya merita vivek mahadhanasya chaurei prabho balibhirendriyanamadeyaha mohandakupakuhre vinipatitasya devesha dehi kripanasya karavalambam. He says, Andhasya me, I am blinded by sense gratification. And because of that, Rita Vivek, my intelligence, my power of discrimination is stolen. Mahadhanasya, this power of discrimination is the greatest wealth of a living entity. Andhasya me Rita Vivek Mahadhanasya. This was my real wealth. Chaurai Prabho Balibhirindriya Namadheyaha. And who has stolen this power of discrimination? Balibhir Indriya Namadheyaha. The senses, they are like the plunderers, just like Jadabharat is telling here. Chaurai Prabho Balibhir, very strong plunderers, thieves. And who are they? What is their name? Indriya. So the Indriyas, the senses, they are like the plunderers. They are like the thieves which steal away the power of discrimination. Mohanda kupa kuhare vinipatitasya. And as a result of that, I cannot see what is happening, what is in front of me. I have fallen down in this deep, dark well of illusion of this material world. Devesha dehi kripanasya karavalambam. Now, O my Lord, I have taken shelter of your lotus feet. So that is the thick boar, which is composed of, bushes, grass, and creepers. And Shukdev Goswami says that this Grihastha ashram is a field of fruitive activity, where if somebody is not attentive, he will be bound to engage in so many fruitive activities. And therefore, Shukdev Goswami says, unless the desire to enjoy family life is completely burnt up, it returns again and again like the weeds. Just like the weeds, even if you take them out, they will again grow up. The desire for sense gratification never goes until and unless it is completely burnt and uprooted from the root. And Shukdev Goswami says that even though camphor may be removed from the pot in which it was kept, the camphor retains, the pot retains the aroma of the camphor. Similarly, as long as the seed of the desire is not destroyed, the fruitive activities are not destroyed. So the seed of desire, the desire is such a wonderful chain, as it is said, Ashanam hi manushyanam kaschit ascharya shrinkhala. This desire is such a wonderful chain. Generally, a person who is bound by the chains cannot run, cannot go anywhere. But the person who is bound by the chain of desires, Ashanam hi manushyanam kaschit ascharya shrinkhala baddha sarva pradhavanti. The person is bound by this chain, runs everywhere. Muktaha tishtati panguvat. And the person who has no desires, he sits at one place. So therefore, unless Prabhupada writes, how to remove the seed of the desires, unless one's desires are completely transferred to the service of the Supreme Lord, the desire for family, children, and things related to it can never be taken away. Even if somebody takes sannyas, and he describes, Prabhupada writes that there are many people in our Krishna consciousness movement who took sannyas, but because of their attachments, they again left and they entered that same activity again. Goswami describes in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu the desire, the seed of enjoyment, how can it be destroyed? Aprarabdha, phala, papa, kuta, bija. There are so many phases of the development of sinful reactions. The things which have not yet come, aprarabdha, prarabdha, the results which we are experiencing now, aprarabdha phala papa, and aprarabdha leads to a more and more sinful life. And as a result of engaging in that sinful activity, the desire to do that sinful activity becomes more and more strong. That is called kuta. For example, if somebody goes and takes alcohol, he may take for just for few times, but the desire to take that becomes more and more strong. Kramenaiva praliyate Vishnu bhakti ratatmanah. Everything will be destroyed by Vishnu bhakti. Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayana agham dhunvanti karsnena niharam iva bhaskara. We'll discuss in the 6th canto. Shukdev Goswami says, only by devotional service unto Lord Vasudeva, all the sinful proclivities will be destroyed. And then Shukdev Goswami says that in this, Jad Bharat says in the 13th chapter that in this boars, there are so many mosquitoes and they are always disturbing this merchant. And Prabhupada writes that people in this world, when they are dealing with so many people, their behavior are compared to the mosquitoes. The way they speak, the way they deal with you, it is like a mosquito stinging. It creates a very undesirable condition. And what does this actually mean? Shukdev Goswami says that the living entity in this world, he's afflicted by so many low-class men who are like biting mosquitoes, and by the thieves who are like locusts, vultures, and the rats. And Prabhupada quotes a verse, bhajan from Narottam Das Thakur. Ahankare matta hayya nitay pad pasariya asatyere satya korimani. Because a living entity in this world, he has forgotten Krishna. He has forgotten the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. Asatyere satya korimani. He thinks illusion, something false, to be real. Because he wants to enjoy in this world. He wants material wealth. He wants material possessions. Therefore, he suffers so much. And then Jad Bharat says in the 3rd verse, he says sometimes this merchant, he sees an imaginary palace in the forest that is called Gandharva Pura. And Prabhupada writes that even in the midst of so many disturbances, what is that Gandharva Pura? Imaginary palace means the place where this person thinks, merchant thinks, I'll be happy. What is this Gandharva Pura? Prabhupada writes that even in the midst of these disturbances, A living entity, a conditioned soul imagines that he is going to construct a grand house and live there permanently. He thinks मेरा बंगला एक न्यारा बन जाएगा, and he will live there permanently, although he knows that he cannot stay. And how this illusion is created? Shukdev Goswami says that because the mind is absorbed in all the lusty desires, he sees this material world as permanent. Although Krishna says this is ashashvata, mind does not accept it. He thinks, no, this is permanent. And when he drinks and eats and have sex life with his wife, he becomes overly attached to the things and pleasures of this world. And he chases after these sense gratifications, these objects, just like a deer chases a mirage in the desert. So materialists, although they know that death will come, but still they don't want to see it. That's the greatest astonishment. Yudhishthir Maharaj was asked by Yaksha, what is the greatest surprise? Yudhishthir Maharaj says, the greatest surprise is ahani ahani bhutani gacchanti ha yamalayam shesha sthavaram icchanti kim ascharyam atah param. He says, in every moment somebody is dying. But those who stay, they think, I will die, not now. There is still some time. It is described in Bhagavatam also. Ascharyam etadhi manushya loke shudam parityajya visham pibanti namani narayana gocharani tyaktyanavacha kuhaka patanti. Actually, Mukundmala Stotra, Kulakshika Maharaj is saying this. Ascharyam etadhi manushya loke. This is so very astonishing in this material world. Sudham parityajya visham pibanti. People, they give up nectar and they are drinking poison. Namani narayana gocharani. They give up the beautiful, wonderful, auspicious and all purifying names of Lord Narayan. Tyaktva anyavacha. Tyaktva, they give them up. They give up the holy names of the Lord. Kuhaka patanti. And they hear and see and read all the topics of this world. They don't realize that death is coming. Paya manushya janma jena shune gauru gun hena janma tara vyartha hoila. Paya amrita dhuni piye vishya garta pani janmi yase kene nahi maila. Kaviraj Goswami says, Paya manushya janma, you have got this human form and you are not hearing the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Hena janma tara vyartha hoila. Your life is a waste. It is as if somebody gets a river of nectar. Paya amrita dhuni, and what is he doing? Piye vishya garta pani, and he is drinking the poison. Why did you take birth? You should have died in the womb of your mother. Very, very strong words Kaviraj Goswami is writing. So therefore, people, they don't realize that death is coming. Deha patyakatradishu atma sainyashu asatsu api tesham pramatto nidhanam pashyan napi na pashyati. Shukdev Goswami says that people in this world, they think my body will save me, my wife, my children, my home, my relatives, my bank balance, they will save me. But they do not understand that they are asatsu api. He thinks they are my sainya, atma sainya. They are my soldiers. They will protect me. My body will protect me. My family will protect me. My bank balance is there. If anything happens, I have all the money. Tesham pramattaha. They become completely mad in intoxication. Pashyannapi na pashyati. They do not see death is approaching. This is all because mind is absorbed in lusty desires. So therefore, Prabhupada writes, those who are materialistic, they try to find peace within the desert of this material life. And he says that in the Shastras, it is said there is no pleasure in this material world. And then Prabhupada writes a wonderful line. Prabhupada writes, even if we agree to live without pleasure, even if somebody says, okay, there is no pleasure, no problem, still I want to stay. He says, even if we agree that to live without pleasure, we are not allowed to do so. will not be allowed to live even without pleasure. That is the condition of the material world. And then Jad Bharat says that in this forest, this merchant is bewildered by seeing a glowing ghost which looks like a meteor. So why it is compared to why he's talking about this glowing ghost? Ghost means it displays itself for some time and then it is gone. What does this actually mean? Shukdev Goswami says that this glowing ghost is gold. The living entity, they desire gold and they run after it. And therefore, they think that gold is a source of material opulence and envy. And people, they are running after this golden ghost, which stays for some time and then it is gone. That's why it is called Chanchala. Lakshmi is called Chanchala. She never stays at one place. And Prabhupada writes a very wonderful and strong purport in the 7th verse of the 14th chapter. He says, living entity is interested in yellow stool known as gold. Very strong words. Yellow stool. And he runs after it. And he says, this is the 5th place which was given by Parikshit Maharaj to Kali. Yutam, Panam, Striya, Sunam. These are the 4 places, because when Kali surrendered to Parikshit Maharaj, we discussed in the first canto, when Kali surrendered and asked for some place to stay, Parikshit Maharaj gave him 4 places. The place where Striya, there is illicit relationship with women. Dyutam, where there is gambling. Panam, intoxication. Striya, illicit relationship with women. And Suna means meat eating. So then Kali said that these 4 places do not exist in your kingdom. Please give me some more space, one more place where I can stay. Then Parikshit Maharaj gave him, okay, you can stay in the place where there is excess accumulation of gold. So Prabhupada writes, this gold is actually a type of stool. A person with a bad liver generally passes yellow stool. And the color of this stool attracts a materialistic person, just like a will-o-wisp attracts one who needs heat. So therefore, this gold, which the whole world is running after, Prabhupada is saying, it is like a yellow stool. And then it is described that this merchant, when he enters the forest, his intelligence is always absorbed in his home, in his wealth, relatives, and so on. He's always thinking, when will I go back? When will I satisfy my relatives? How will I increase my wealth? In this way, he runs from one place to another in search of success. And what does this actually mean? Shukdev Goswami says that the conditioned soul in this world is so very absorbed in finding nice residential quarters just to maintain the body. Living entity in this world is always thinking, how can I get a nice place for myself? This is the biggest anxiety for a conditioned soul in this world. I should have a house, and that house should have all the facilities, all the necessities which are required to make my life very, very comfortable. And in this way, he forgets everything. He forgets that Jivara Swarup Hoye, I am Krishna Das, I am servant of Krishna. He forgets that. He forgets his relationship with Krishna, and he just seeks only bodily comfort running around in this forest of material existence. Prabhupada writes that not understanding the aim of life, even though he acquires sufficient necessities, he manufactures artificial necessities. This is very, very important to understand. In today's age, people have sufficient to live, but still they create more and more necessities, and all the media industry, advertising industry is fueling that desire. There is something called permanent obsolescence, and there is something called perceived or forced obsolescence. For example, if somebody has a smartphone and this phone is working. But after some time, he sees, oh, new phone has come in the market. This is better version. I have iPhone 10, but iPhone 11 Pro has come in the market. I want it. That is the perceived obsolescence. He thinks, this phone is of no use to me now. I should get this better phone. And third is, and second one is, permanent, means you have a phone which is not working, because the industries, they make a particular gadget in such a way that it will not work after a certain amount of time. They make that gadget in such a way, okay, after 6 months it will not work, or after 2 years it will not work. Otherwise, how their products will sell? So therefore, Prabhupada writes a very interesting line. Even though a person has enough sufficient necessities, he manufactures artificial necessities and becomes more and more entangled. That is how a living entity becomes more and more conditioned soul, a person in the world, seeing all the propaganda, all the advertisements. His desires are fueled and he wants it more and more. He thinks, I am the doer, I am controller, I am the enjoyer. Ishwaroham, aham bhogi, siddhoham balwan sukhi. I want to enjoy. And then after that, Jada Bharat describes that this merchant, when he's in the forest, his eyes are sometimes covered by the dust of a whirlwind. And by this whirlwind, when this dust goes, he cannot see anything. In the 10th canto of Bhagavatam, it is also described when Trinavarta, he entered the Gokula, Rajasa Tamasavrita, he raised the dust, and because of the dust, all the Brajvasis, they could not see anything. Shukadeva Goswami says, what is that dust? That Rajasa means the Raja. When the Rajogun rises in the eyes of a living entity, when the Rajogun increases in the heart, one cannot see Krishna. And therefore, Shukadeva Goswami says, what is that dust? This dust is the dust of the lust, which arises in the heart of a living entity, in the heart of a conditioned soul, when he sees the beauty of his wife. He becomes blinded by the lusty desires, or any opposite sex. He's blinded by the desire to enjoy. And because he's blinded by the desire, he neglects all the rules and regulations for a regulated sex life. He does not know that if he disobeys the laws of nature, he'll be punished in future. And Prabhupada writes, he says, household attraction resides in the wife, because sex is the center of household life. And he quotes this verse, Yan Mayathunadi Grihamedhi Sukham Hi Tucham. A living entity in this world, his only enjoyment in the material life is to enjoy with women. And therefore, Prabhupada writes that those who strictly want to follow the rules and regulations of householder life, they engage in sex life only once a month at the end of the periods of a wife. And therefore, this person, he looks forward for this opportunity. And Prabhupada writes in the 14th chapter verse that sex life is not bad if it is done done according to the principles of religion. As Krishna says, Dharma viruddha bhuteshu kam asmi bharatarshabha. And when Shukadeva Goswami says that he does not know that his disobedience is witnessed, whatever act we do in our life, it is witnessed by 12 agents. We can escape the laws of the government. We cannot escape the laws of nature. We can avoid, being punished because nobody saw when I was doing a crime. But we cannot avoid anything any punishment by supreme material nature. And therefore, Prabhupada writes that illicit sex is thoroughly observed by 12 agents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And who are these 12 agents? Suryo Agni Kham Maruddevaha Soma Sandhya Ahani Dishaha Kam Ku Swayam Dharma Iti Hyete Dahyasya Sakshinaha. Surya, sun. Okay, sun is not there at night time. Agni, fire. Okay, fire must not be there. Kham, you cannot avoid sky. Marut, you cannot avoid air. Devatas, the demigods, they are always there. Moon, at the night time, moon is there. Sandhya, the evening. Ahani, night. Dishaha, the directions. There are 12 directions. Everybody is watching. Come, water. Then Kuh means land. And Swayam Dharma Iti. Super soul himself witnesses the actions and various activities of a living entity. And therefore, Prabhupada writes, illicit sex is never excused, and those who engage in it suffer life after life. Asurim yonimapanna mudha janmani janmani. Prabhupada writes, illicit sex creates pregnancies, and these unwanted pregnancies leads to abortion. Therefore, this is the most prominent sin due to lusty desires. And then this person, merchant in the forest, he runs after a mirage to acquire water. So therefore, a person, he takes shelter of some sinful person for help. Prabhupada writes in the purport of this 5th verse. Because he has nowhere to help and he has lost his intelligence, he runs after a mirage. What is that mirage? Taking the help of a sinful person. And therefore, they do not know that they will be drowned more and more in this pit of material existence. Andha yathandhir upaniyamana. As Prahlad Maharaj says, Andha yathandhir upaniyamana. This is like a blind following the blind, and both will fall in a ditch. And therefore, what is this mirage? And what is this water? Shukdev Goswami says, a living entity in this world, he appreciates the futility of sense enjoyment, but due to his bodily conception, he forgets it. He understands sense enjoyment is not good. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate. He knows he has suffered a lot in this material world. Millions of lifetimes we have suffered. But still, we have forgotten it all. And therefore, living entity again and again runs after this material enjoyment. Matirna Krishne parata swato va mitho vipadyet grahavratanam adhanta gobhir vishuta tamishram punah punashcharvita charvananam. Matirna Krishne, those people who have lost their intelligence, they are not Krishna conscious. They cannot attain Krishna by their own endeavors, by the endeavors of others, or by the combined effort of both. Why? Adanta gobhir vishutam tamishwar adanta. They are not sense controlled. Punah punashcharvita charvinanam. It is like somebody, he chews a sugar cane and throws the remaining chaff, and somebody else picks it up, again chews it, again throws away, and the third person picks up. This may be little good, but the modern analogy, somebody can say, if somebody is eating a chewing gum, he sucks out all the juice and throws the chewing gum, other person takes that and starts chewing that chewing gum, which is completely already, sucked. No juice in that. That is the condition of a living entity. Millions of lifetimes we have done the same thing. We have not got sense gratification, but still the desire, the conditioning, the illusion is so very strong that one is not able to give up. Kamadinam katina katitha palita durnidesha tesham jata maina karuna natrapanopashanti. So this devotee is saying that I have served my senses, my anarthas, kama, krodha, lobha, moha. I have served my anarthas for millions of lifetimes. But these are such ungrateful masters Tesham jata mai na karuna. They have not shown mercy. Natrapa, no peace, no upashanti, no satisfaction. Utsrajyayeta nathayadupate. Oh my Lord, somehow by mercy of you, somehow mercy of your devotees, I have given up that service. Please engage me in your service. So therefore, a living entity in this world, he keeps running after material life. Prabhupada writes, one may understand, but still one is not able to follow because of the conditionings. But wonderful thing is, if somebody takes shelter of Krishna, Prabhupada in the 10th chapter, this 10th verse purport of the 14th chapter, he describes very wonderful thing. He says, even if somebody does not understand the futility of this material existence, somehow or other he takes shelter of Krishna. You know what Krishna does? Krishna personally take him out of this. And Prabhupada quotes the 10th Canto Bhagavatam verse, Yasyaham anugrihanami harishye tad dhanam shanaihi. Krishna is saying, if I show special mercy to somebody, I take away everything from him. So anybody here wants special mercy of the Lord? Everything will be taken away. Somebody went to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, Swamiji, I want your special mercy. Prabhupada quoted this verse. Special mercy means everything will be taken away from you. Do you want it? So this person said, no, Swamiji, I am happy. Thank you very much. He left. If somebody wants sense gratification in this world and he approaches Krishna, approaching Krishna for a sense gratification is better than approaching a devata for sense gratification. Anya kami yadi kare Krishnera bhajan na magite ha Krishna tare dena swacharan anya kami. If somebody wants sense gratification, yadi kare Krishnera bhajan, if he does the bhajan of Krishna, na magite ha Krishna tare. This devotee is worshipping Krishna for what? For sense gratification. He is not asking for lotus feet of Krishna. न मांगने के पश्चात भी कृष्ण अपना चरण कमल उस भक्त को दे देते हैं. न मागिते ह कृष्ण तारे देना स्वचरण. कृष्ण कहे आमा भजे मागे विषय सुख अमृत छाड़ी विष मागे एई बड़ा मूर्ख. Krishna is saying, he thinks आमा भजे, मेरा भजन कर रहा है. What is asking? विषय सुख. He is asking for sense gratification. Krishna kohe ama bhaje mage vishay sukh. And what? This is as if Amrit chhadi vish mage is giving up nectar and is asking for poison. Ei bada murkh. He is foolish. Ami bigye murkha vishay ke na diva swacharnamrit diya vishay bhulaiba. He is fool. I am not fool. I am intelligent. Ami bigye murkha. I will not give him sense gratification. What I'll give? Swacharanamrit diya vishay bhulaiba. I'll give him the nectar of my own devotional service. He'll forget sense gratification. Kama lagi Krishna bhaje paye Krishna rase kama chhadi das hoite hoye abhilashe. Kama lagi. He is doing Krishna bhajan for kam, for sense gratification. What does he get? He gets Krishna rasa. Kama chhadi das hoite hoye abhilashe. And the result is, he gives up the desire for sense gratification. He desires to become servant of Krishna. That's the mercy of the Lord. That's why Prabhupada says, Krishna personally takes a devotee out of this entanglement of the material existence, even though one may not like to do. Prabhupada writes a beautiful statement in Nectar of Instruction. He says, Krishna consciousness is so wonderful, that one is forcibly dragged to success. Somebody was saying, entering Krishna consciousness is like entering an underworld mafia. You can enter, but once you are in for some time, you cannot leave. Because anybody in the underworld mafia, they know enough. And when they try to leave, they're not allowed to leave. Similarly, in Krishna consciousness, we have heard enough of Krishna Katha. We have heard so many pastimes of Krishna. We have heard so many qualities of Krishna, so many wonderful pastimes. Now, even if somebody wants, I want to go away, Krishna will not allow. Krishna is such a wonderful God. He has mamatva. ये मेरा devotee है. इसको कैसे छोड़ सकता हूं मैं? You know, he will never leave a devotee. Even if a devotee wants to go away, Krishna will not leave the devotee. That is a hope for us. Even if we think बस हो गया, बहुत हो गया भक्ति, you know, थोड़ा घूम के आते हैं, मजा मजा करके आएंगे. No, Krishna will say, sorry, sir. There is no U-turns in the path of Krishna consciousness. Even if you go, even if you try to enjoy, you will not be able to enjoy. You will feel guilty. Therefore, best way is to complete the process, you know. Then Jadbharat says that this merchant, sometimes his heart is pained by hearing the sounds of the owls and the crickets. And Prabhupada writes that because this world is full of envious people, even within the inner circles, there is much backbiting. And that is compared to the sound vibration of the cricket in the forest. You know, people in this world, they like to do gossip and they like to spread rumors. If somebody is not there, they will start speaking all the bad things about that person. And many times it is a very, very unfortunate position that even that after becoming a devotee, the tendency to criticize is so very deeply rooted that we start talking about the bad qualities of a devotee and we may justify that I'm not talking wrong. This is correct. I'm saying the truth. I've seen personally this devotee doing all these things. But are we supposed to do it? Because the result will be disastrous. That devotee may overcome all those faults. That devotee may start following all the rules and regulations. But because we offended that devotee, we will fall down in the material world. So therefore, we have to be really careful. The greatest tapasya in the devotional circle is to keep the mouth shut. When to speak, when not to speak. That is very, very important. What to speak, what not to speak. That's what we have to learn. Otherwise, there is no difference between devotees talking about some other devotee, although it may be right, or and the outside people, they are talking about some of the other friends of them. So Shukdev Goswami says that a living entity, a person in the material world, he is so much aggrieved by the chastisement of his enemies and the government servants. When he is not able to pay taxes, when he is not able to follow the rules and regulations of the government, he is chastised severely. And this creates lots of trouble. He becomes very, very sad. So therefore, Prabhupada writes, when one takes to Krishna consciousness, one always hears unpalatable words from relatives. This is the nature of the world. One cannot avoid mental distress due to backbiting of envious people. And most of us have this experience. When we start coming to Krishna consciousness, our relatives would say, they would have said, क्या हो गया? सब ठीक है ना? ये कोई उम्र है? बाद में कर लेना भक्ति. ये सब उम्र नहीं है भक्ति करने की, you know? जब हमारी उम्र के हो जाओगे तब कर लेना. और रिलेटिव्स से, अरे मंदिर में आप दिन भर क्या करते हैं? मंदिर में जाओ, घंटी बजाओ, हाथ जोड़ो, प्रसाद मिलेगा, आ जाओ. Whole day you are spending in temple. What is this? So many things. Array, if you will start continue going there, you will also become like them. Your hairstyle will also change. So many things. Devotees have to tolerate all that. So we'll stop here. There are very, very beautiful, wonderful lessons. We'll continue on Monday. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. If anybody has any questions, they can put on the chat. So we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.